Hello, everyone. This is Wes Henson, pastor of the Ridge Church, and our campus is located at 7350 Old Highway 13 in Carbondale, Illinois. And this is a 5-minute overview of the unit study entitled When Emotions Rise, and our lesson is titled Shaking Off Fear for December the 13th, 2020. Today, our study passage is found in Psalm 91, and the point of our lesson is that God is our defender no matter what we face, so we don't need to be afraid. And I invite you to connect with us on Tuesdays at 6:30 on our Facebook page and also on our website. If you'll check below, there are some resources that you can download and review, a 2-page outline, and also the study guide for this week's lesson. So let's talk about our topic for today, fear. Fear takes many forms, and maybe the fear that we have may not be a legitimate concern, but fear is real to us nonetheless. And if we don't deal with it, if it goes unchecked, it can paralyze us or lead us to act irrationally. So thankfully, we don't have to face our fears alone. Psalm 91 gives us a strong assurance that whenever fear strikes, that we can rest in God's power and also in God's protection. Something to think about as we go through this lesson this week. What is something that you don't like to admit that you're afraid of? So be thinking about that as we begin our study. So Psalm 91 verses 1 through 6 is where we begin. And the truth of this passage is that when fear strikes, we should trust God's power. Let me read a couple of verses here. Verse 1 says, "The one who lives under the protection of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say concerning the Lord, who is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." Verse 4 says, "He will cover you with his feathers, and you will take refuge under his wings." Now, we don't really know who wrote this psalm or what kinds of threats this individual faced, but we know that he was not afraid because he had a strong trust in God. And that trust was grounded in the character of God. And in these first 6 verses, the psalmist here uses 3 different names for God that reflects his character. He calls him the Most High, the Almighty, and the Lord. We may wonder where people turn to when they're afraid. And then we also might ask the question, why should a person turn to God? And the answer found in these verses is that whether it's morning, noon, or night, God has the power, and his power is enough for us. Let's move on to verses 9 through 13. Verse 9 says, "Because you have made the Lord my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place, no harm will come to you, no plague will come near your tent. For he will give his angels orders concerning you to protect you in all of your ways." So truth number 2 is that when fear strikes, we can trust God's protection. We can trust God's power, and we can also trust God's protection. As we live in relationship with him, God protects us. And so we can take comfort knowing that God provides the protection to keep us safe. But the question arises as we read these verses, who is our protection? Is it a guardian angel, or is it the Lord himself? And so we will kind of discuss that as we unpack this lesson on Tuesday night. Let's look at verses 14, 15, and 16. Verse 14 says, "Because he has his heart set on me," and this is the Lord speaking, "I will deliver him, I will protect him. When he calls out to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him. I will give him honor. I will satisfy him with a long life and show him my salvation." And so the truth here, truth number 3, is that when fear strikes, we ought to be walking with God. The psalmist had trusted God for protection. He had trusted in God's power, and God answered his request and also gave him so much more. He gave him honor, a long life, and also salvation. The psalmist honored God by trusting him in the face of fear, and in turn, God honored him. But there's also another question that arises from this psalm, and it's kind of like the elephant in the room. And the question is this: what happens if we don't get rescued? Even though we trust God, sometimes the thing that we fear most happens anyway. Now, God, we need to remember that God doesn't tell us how he will rescue us or when he will rescue us. We can only be assured that he will deliver us. And even if God doesn't save us from the things that we fear in this life, we can know that we are eternally safe in Jesus. Here's a application, 3 applications to this passage as we think about fears and shaking off fear. We can begin by making a list of those things that tend to cause us to be afraid. And second application is, if we are dealing with a long-term, deep-seated fear or phobia, we need to get counsel from someone and talk about it with someone. Maybe they can help us. And then the third application is support. Walk along someone who might be prone to fear and be a source of encouragement to them. Okay, so that's our lesson, a 5-minute lesson overview. Connect with us on Tuesday nights at 6:30 on our Facebook page or our website, and download the resources below, a 2-page summary and also the study guide. All right, you all have a good week, and I will look for you on Tuesday night at 6:30. Bye now.